Ever wondered if the mighty US dollar is facing a storm? Well, it's not the entire dollar that's in the hot seat. It's actually the petrodollar, its loyal partner in global dominance. Picture this: a world where the backbone of the greenback's power, the petrodollar, is under serious threat. Countries like China, Russia, India, and Brazil, heavyweights in the global economic arena, are shaking things up. They're ditching the dollar for their own currencies in the trade of oil and energy, putting the once solid petrodollar on shaky ground. And if big players like Saudi Arabia decide to make the switch too, it could be the beginning of the end for the petrodollar and eventually the dollar itself. Here's a twist for you. A similar story unfolded about a decade ago. Back in 2012, the US and Europe thought they could make the dollar stronger by putting sanctions on Iran. Little did they know, those very sanctions planted the seeds for trouble ahead. Fast forward to 2022, and the Russian oil sanctions are thrusting the decline of the petrodollar into the spotlight once again. In a recent meeting, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Putin extended their decade-long agreement to trade without using dollars. Already, a significant two-thirds of the trade between China and Russia is conducted in yuan and ruble. Notably, in February, Iraq and China sealed a deal to trade using yuan, and China and France completed their inaugural yuan-settled LNG trade, sidelining dollars in energy transactions. The big question on everyone's mind is, could the yuan take over the dollar, marking the end of the petrodollar era? We'll explore these questions in this video, but before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay updated on intriguing developments across Asia. The rise of the petrodollar. In 1973, a few years after countries stopped using the gold standard, the United States and Saudi Arabia made a deal. They would only use dollars for trading oil, and the profits would be invested in US Treasury bonds, notes, and bills. This decision turned petrodollars from being just about oil into a force that influenced every part of global trade, making it seem unbeatable. Fast forward to 2022, and around half of all global trade and about 60% of the world's currency reserves are in dollars. In comparison, China's currency, the yuan, only makes up a small 2.7% in both global trade and currency reserves. This suggests that while it's not impossible, de-dollarization may not happen in the near future. For more than 2 decades, countries that are still growing and developing have been trying to use the dollar less. Even the International Monetary Fund has said we need a new global reserve currency, whether it's the yuan, a currency used by BRICS countries, or a mix of different national currencies. Countries are getting ready for a world where the dollar is less important. In 2012, the United States and the European Union put sanctions on Iran's oil trade, which meant Iran couldn't use the global SWIFT payment system. In response, Iran stopped sending oil to countries like Germany, Spain, Greece, Britain, and France, who together bought about 18% of its oil. Even though Iran officially sold less oil, they found creative ways to keep selling and emptying their oil tankers despite the sanctions. Iran has found a smart way to sell its oil without getting caught. They use the busy shipping routes and a complex network of places where oil is made and traded in the Gulf region to hide where the oil comes from. This lets Iran sell its oil to countries like China, Syria, Venezuela, and others without being easily tracked. Unless there's a diplomatic deal about Iran's nuclear program that lifts the sanctions on their oil, Iran will probably keep using this sneaky method to make a lot of money for their government, running an undercover business to generate billions of dollars. Fast forward to 2022, and we find ourselves in a familiar situation, this time with Russia taking center stage. However, the blow to the supremacy of the dollar is expected to be more severe for two significant reasons. Firstly, countries led by India and China have already experienced the advantages of trading in their own currencies, the rupee and yuan, without the need for the dollar in between. Secondly, China, with aspirations of global dominance, has gained considerable influence compared to the past decade, emerging as a serious contender to challenge the US. Although the US still holds the title for the world's largest economy, boasting a GDP of $23 trillion, China is rapidly closing the gap at $17.7 trillion. Interestingly, China also possesses the largest reserves of US currency at $3.1 trillion. In a curious twist of fate, if China decides, it has the power to strategically reduce the strength of the dollar by offloading just a fraction of its reserves. The beginning of the end of the petrodollar. There's been a lot of talk about how the rise of BRICS might challenge the dominance of the G7, and through this alliance, potentially unseat the US by moving away from the dollar. China, in particular, appears to be gradually advancing towards diminishing the influence of the US and its currency. In August of this year, the BRICS coalition made a significant announcement, expanding its membership to include 6 new countries, among them 3 major oil producers from the Gulf nations: Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. These Gulf countries are crucial suppliers of crude oil to China, contributing over 5 million barrels per day, which amounts to half of China's total oil imports. Looking ahead, if China were to use its currency, the RMB, to pay for all these oil imports, Beijing could decrease its reliance on US dollars by a substantial $173 billion annually. This figure represents 28% of China's current RMB settled trade. To put it into perspective, although $173 billion is just 6% of China's total yearly goods imports, it would significantly boost the overall portion of Chinese trade settled in RMB from 23% to 29%, almost a third of all goods imports. On October 18, 2023, a historic moment unfolded as PetroChina, the Chinese oil and gas company, concluded the first-ever international crude oil trade using the nation's digital currency, the renowned digital yuan. This transaction is being viewed as the initial step towards the inevitable decline of the petrodollar. In recent decades, China has experienced a substantial and consistent surge in both its oil imports and refining capabilities, solidifying its position as the world's leading oil importer and the second-largest oil refiner. This significant growth has played a pivotal role in reshaping the dynamics of global energy markets. The race for China's top oil suppliers has primarily been between Saudi Arabia and Russia, with Russia already engaging in yuan-based trades with China. However, despite Saudi Arabia's ongoing use of the dollar in trade with China, there is a growing expectation that Riyadh will soon align itself with the trend and transition to trading in the Chinese currency, breaking away from the reliance on the dollar. De-dollarization is happening at a stunning pace. If China manages to establish a non-dollar oil trading framework with Saudi Arabia, it could potentially shield itself from financial sanctions aimed at its oil imports. Chinese leaders are well aware that, akin to Russia, their dollar reserves are susceptible to freezing, along with the potential halt of transactions and freezing of holdings of Chinese firms. With this strategic goal in mind, President Xi explicitly urged Saudi leaders to consider settling transactions in RMB. In response, Saudi leaders have indicated their openness to the idea of accepting RMB as a payment currency. The RMB currently ranks as the 5th most utilized international payment currency, the 2nd largest trade financing currency, and the 5th most common currency for FX spot transactions. As reported by SWIFT, the financial messaging service. Over the last 2 years, the RMB's share in global trade finance has more than tripled, now accounting for 5.80% of all trade finance and surpassing the euro as of September 2023. Does this spell the demise of the almighty dollar? Well, not exactly. The dollar still holds the title as the world's predominant currency, widely used by many nations. However, the ongoing shift in global trade dynamics suggests that the dollar's dominance may not be everlasting. We're witnessing an increasing number of countries opting for currencies other than the dollar in their transactions. Should any currency rise to replace the dollar, the Chinese yuan appears to be a strong contender. Furthermore, it's essential to note that if de-dollarization were to occur, it would likely commence with the collapse of the petrodollar. Given that crude oil is the world's most traded commodity and China stands as the largest oil importer, the dynamics of the petrodollar are pivotal. Evidently, signs of change are emerging, such as the expansion of BRICS and the inclusion of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Iran in this coalition. Noteworthy events include China's milestone achievement of completing its inaugural cross-border crude oil settlement using the digital yuan. Statistics from the People's Bank of China reveal a substantial increase in the volume of cross-border yuan settlements, reaching 38.9 trillion yuan, $5.32 trillion, from January to September 2023, an impressive 24% year-on-year growth. Throughout the year, the yuan has experienced significant internationalization, surpassing the euro to become the second-largest currency in Brazil's foreign exchange reserves. Other milestones include Argentina using yuan to repay its foreign debts for the first time, and Pakistan making its inaugural payment for Russian crude oil expenses in yuan. Even France, a member of NATO and the G7, has chosen to settle LNG trade between China's CNOOC and French energy firm Engie in yuan. All these developments collectively point in one direction. The era of the petrodollar is approaching its end. While de-dollarization may not unfold overnight, the momentum is undeniably shifting in China's favor, with the petro-yuan gaining acceptance on a global scale. What are your thoughts on the possibility of China's yuan replacing the US dollar? Share your opinions and drop your comments below. If you enjoyed the content, give it a thumbs up to show your support. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more engaging videos like this one, ensuring you stay updated on intriguing topics.